see.
Uh-oh. Don't say the N-word. Actual, don't say the...
Let me check the chat.
Actual, no. He can't hear me.
Very much power move.
His ear pods are in.
Yeah.
I meant to mute that. Yeah, so...
His
He's
ear
gonna
pods are
call
in.
you Nazi, yes. It's Nuance Bro. It's Nuance Bro in the chat.
He can't... I'm not in.
I should probably tweet out the stream. Yeah, so I woke up a little while ago. I didn't prepare at all for this debate because I don't need to prepare. Oh, Vosh is in the lobby right now. Let me pull him up.
Hey there.
What's up, Vosh?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me on your end all fine?
Yeah, we hear you great. I look forward to me calling you a Nazi. It seems like we're both living in anticipation of that beautiful moment.
Yeah, apparently. Well, first and foremost, do you think I'm a Nazi?
I don't know. I never know these days, but so far I haven't seen any evidence to that effect.
Okay. See, look, some charitableness right here on the program.
I love charity. I'm a very charitable guy.
All right, so I'm gonna go with the quick first off. So you did a video on Tim Pool. This is not related to a debate topic.
Yeah.
But you did a video on Tim Pool with the Ahmed Arbery thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned my video in there. Did you watch my video before mentioning it?
I skimmed it a little bit. I have a pretty long watch list, so I skimmed over it pretty briefly.
Okay, so you mentioned that I uploaded a video justifying that. If you watch that video, there's no way you could come to that conclusion.
I'd say there was a little bit of water muddying there, because it seems to me, at least from my understanding of the case, that there's no ambiguity whatsoever that them boys ought to be going to jail on murder 1 or at least murder 2. So I feel like a lot of the hand-wringing sometimes kind of lends people the impression there's more legal ambiguity than there actually is.
Well, there is. That's what I covered, the law. They're not being charged with murder 1 even. They're being charged with felony murder because the assertion by the court is that the brandishing the guns would be considered a felony assault, and it's a death during the course of a felony assault. So that's a felony murder. That's why one, not just the shooter, but the father and then the other person are being charged with the murder because the argument is...
Yeah, because they're complicit in what's taken place.
Yeah. And basically, if there's no felony, if they deem that to be a legal stop, which
they can't do it.
They could. I mean, the jury.
Oh, I mean, they could, but legally they can't. In Georgia, what's the term? The law for citizens' arrests necessitates that the people conducting the arrest need to have actually witnessed the crime for which they would be arresting the other citizen. And since nobody actually watched Ahmaud Arbery commit any crimes, they had no legal justification for committing their stop.
Oh, two things. One, that's not the case. That's the specific extra protection that's in Georgia law. There's common law around citizens' arrest that dates all the way back to England. And number two, people did see him going into the construction site, which is not necessarily a felony, but it is an act of a crime.
They didn't see them go into the construction site, and the existence of common law dating back to England has nothing to do with the law in Georgia.
Of course it does. What do you think our legal system is based on? It's based on English common law.
Yeah, that doesn't... Wait. Just because it's based on English common law doesn't mean that laws enforced by states don't take precedent over those.
No, but it's like the stand your ground thing with the Tamir Rice. Not Tamir Rice, with Trayvon Martin, where the stand your ground law, which was not even applicable in that case, is just something that builds on a previously established precedent that is in Georgia.
Which has nothing to do with Georgia's specific legal provisions for